President of Mineworker Union AMCU, Joseph Mathunjwa, has defended not signing a broad agreement by stakeholders aimed at stemming a wave of job losses triggered by falling commodity prices, labour instability and soaring costs. The country's mining industry, unions and government signed the 10-point document earlier this week. Well, Francis Hurd spoke to the AMCU leader and Chamber of Mines president about the plan and the current state of that sector. Well, Mathunjwa says while they support the effort, workers will be careful about what they officially agree to.
This agreement is not the first agreement. 2008, during I think Patel, they entered the state with business and unions. They entered into the same agreement. What resulted in 1.5 years from 2008 to 2010 is about 1,200,000 jobs were lost after people were trained and laid off. The boom came back after 2010. How many of the workers that were trained and retrenched were called back, were returned back to their employment? I don't have any record of that.
So you're basically saying it's pointless? It's
pointless. We said to the business and the government, stop the retrenchment processes, apply your 10-point plan. Once it failed, then you can go back to, but they don't want, they want to run this thing concurrently. So, and 2 or 3, or the 4th point that I want to make, the government or the business, there is no undertaking, there is no commitment. Why the business, they are not saying 10% of our profit, we are setting aside immediately for beneficiations.
Okay, I'm going to ask that to Mike, the business stance. But first, AMCU, you're saying you don't want to talk about productivity. As far as my reading of the agreement, there will only be discussions. This is something that's on the table. And surely it should be, because this is something that affects the profitability of the mines, their ability to create more jobs. The decision of global mining houses as to whether they will be active here and create jobs here, or go somewhere else and create jobs elsewhere. Surely productivity has to be discussed.
Mine workers have been productive for so many years. This CEO wouldn't be taking 50 million as their shares or as their dividend or whatever sort of bonuses. This document or this declaration suggests that the union shouldn't maybe fight for retrenchment. Like, for instance, if we are not happy with the retrenchment, we can go on strike. This declaration wants to take away the power of the union to say, no, even we see the situation because we are distressed, the economy is distressed, you cannot exercise your constitutional right. You remember in 2013,
Joseph,
quickly, let me finish this point.
We need to give him a chance to respond.
2013, the same declaration was signed during Susan Shabangu. How many jobs did it save the government with business? Nothing. It took AMCU 2-week strike in order to save 14,000 jobs.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you later on, what was the point of that huge strike we saw in the platinum sector? Good. First, Mike, underlying this is a sense that still mining houses are holding on to profits, exploiting workers. Another allegation that this productivity issue has been snuck into this 10-point plan. Your response to both?
I said when we started this discussion that there are all stakeholders were sitting in this meeting. This document was not imposed on anybody. The teams sat together and looked at 10 interventions. And there were several points which were put on the table. The first one was productivity, as Joseph has mentioned, yes. The second issue was the issue of rehabilitation, looking at rehabilitation funds, the issue of training schemes, the issue of exploring the possibility of promoting, as an example, platinum in the global markets to ensure that its usage is increased or something like on the basis of its market. All those issues which were put on the table, it's an attempt, not anybody being pressurized, but an attempt to say, if we attempted to explore these possibilities as interventions, can they achieve something? Can they deliver something? And the most important part for us is an attempt to save the industry. It's to ensure that this industry survives. We employ more than 500,000 people. Yes, we're seeing retrenchments. As I've said earlier, it's the issue of last resort, that is retrenchments. But ideally, in a perfect world, the mining industry would like to grow.
You said that this deal is useless, Joseph,
it is.
and I want to ask you, what about your strike? Because there was a protracted strike in the platinum sector. We are now talking about a jobs bloodbath. If you look at the numbers coming out of Lonmin, what's happened to them, their share price, the very sustainability of that company seems to be under threat, in my opinion. So what did a huge strike, workers asserting themselves, achieve?
I mean, let's just make an example. At ArcelorMittal, NUMSA never went on 5-month strike. What is happening? They've signed a deal with the government, which saves what their mills are closing down. So there was no strike, there was no 5-month strike. Secondly, are you suggesting that these mine workers should live under poverty line, whereas they are contributing about 7% of the GDP of this country, going underground 3 kilometers, earning the basic salary of 5,600, generation to generation? Since 1994, mine workers, they haven't tasted the wealth of this country. Should we fold our hands? 2012, workers raised that they want a living wage. The government and business colluded against the workers, massacred them at Marikana. Should we just clamp and rejoice and say it's business as usual? It cannot. We cannot contain and protect these structural apartheid structures that is meant for black people. Remember Chamber of Mine. Chamber of Mine, it was a coordinator of marketing the minerals after 1602. So Chamber of Mine will always protect the interests of the capital.
We don't exploit our employees. We know the challenges that we faced in the past. The mining industry is known with the migrant labor system, the hostile system, language called Fanagalo, quite a number of negative issues, which we have over a period of time corrected. But we need to understand that as we improve as an industry from a safety point of view, from living conditions point of view, right at the moment we're working with a framework agreement with President Zuma, which was originally, as you know, was originated through former President Deputy Kgalema Motlanthe. We're sitting in a situation where we're saying this industry should grow.
We're running out of time, so I'd like to ask you both for a comment on what we're heading towards now, a possible strike in the gold mining sector. Do you not believe the Chamber of Mines when it says that half of the gold mines are running at a loss, that this could be catastrophic?
As long as this CEO from Sibanye, from Anglo Gold Ashanti, Harmony, their salaries, even when the economy was distressed, they moved their salary to 100%. I mean, we cannot go and tell our members that, no, you cannot ask a living wage. We cannot. These CEOs, go and check for the last 5 years how much they were getting this CEO. Even their production was down by 20.8%, but they were still taking 30 million. Some of them, they even contribute those bonuses to Wits University. They're not even investing to their own employees.
Well, education, arguably also, but let's not get into that.
But what about their workers who are not educated?
You've made your point strongly. Your final word, Mike. Unfortunately,
you know, the mining industry, when the times are good, we make money. And we have investors, and those investors are not only international investors. Locally, the PIC, the Government Employee Pension Fund, and quite a number of local investors look for benefits in the form of dividends. And those dividends are paid handsomely when the times are good. Right now, when the times are where we are, where commodity prices are where we are, we cannot afford to go on strike.
Mike Tekia there from the Chamber of Mines speaking to Francis Hurd as well as AMCU President Joseph Mathunjwa. Now, gold mining shares as a collective have jumped by 27% during August. It is the only sector on the JSE that shows positive momentum. But can the optimism around gold mining last?
Gold miners have had a good run on the stock market this past month. Volatility in global financial markets, coupled with temporary US dollar